Ladies and gentlemen, the play is the thing. With your host, Judy Sleed. Special guest, Hugh, town crier and village historian. Now here's Judy.
Thank you, Lee. That was lovely introduction, and I'm so excited to have Hugh King as my guest, the town crier. Does that mean that you cry all the time in the town?
Not all the time, but my job is to go around to different organizations and talk about local history, and then sometimes go to the town board meetings and talk about local history.
That's what the town crier
Not the real
means?
town crier. Years ago, during the, like, say at the time of the American Revolution,
Yes.
there weren't a lot of newspapers, and many people couldn't read anyway, so the town crier would announce the news. I'm sure the town crier probably read the Declaration of Independence at different places. So it was an announcer. He would announce things.
So how did that title stick you?
Tony Bullock and Fred Yardley decided that since I had this information about local history, why keep it to myself? Why not go out about the town and talk about it? So they hired me as the town crier. I was supposed to make 20 appearances a year and get paid $50 for every appearance, then put a voucher in at the end of the year. And of course, I made more than 20 appearances. So that's how it started.
So that's how you got your wealth.
Well, yeah, some wealth. And that was like in 1989 about, so it's been over 20 years.
I hope you got a raise since then.
No, I know. I don't even collect the money anymore. As you know, when you collect Social Security, Judy.
Oh, really?
They don't want you making a lot of money.
I know, I know that $50 really adds up.
So I don't charge anymore. I don't charge. I just go.
Well, I'm just fascinated with all the knowledge. I've watched you once in the cemetery and some other time. I forget where it was, but I'm just amazed. I love history. So I don't even know where I should ask you which area to talk about. We talked about Route 114, whereas my what is it called? The
GPS.
GPS tells me it's Sag Harbor Turnpike.
Yes, and I know this because it's in the town records or it's in the trustee records, I can't remember, that the road was opened up in, say, 1848 as a toll road. That's why it's called the Sag Harbor Turnpike. You had to pay a toll to go from East Hampton on that road to Sag Harbor. And everybody wanted to go to Sag Harbor years ago because it was like the shopping center of the East End. Because of the whaling trade, so many exotic things came from other countries, and they would be in stores in Sag Harbor. So if you really wanted something special, you had Jerry Baker, who drove a stage from Amagansett to Sag Harbor from about 1859 to 1900 every day. You'd give him a little list, or you'd go with him. You'd go down the turnpike. And you know where the toll booth was? As you're coming into Sag Harbor on the left, there's the Jewish cemetery, right? When you go into Sag Harbor, that's where the toll booth was. And you had to pay the toll. It depends. If you were a horse and a wagon, maybe you'd pay 4 cents. If you had a herd of cattle, maybe you'd have to pay 10 cents. Or if you had 2 horses, you would have to pay more. It depends.
It's amazing.
So that's why it's called the Sag Harbor Turnpike. It
Turnpike.
wasn't actually a toll road at one time.
What about Route 27? My GPS tells me for a second that Sag Harbor Turnpike then changes its mind and there's a 27.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where Route 27 got its name. And we all called it Montauk Highway, of course.
Yes.
But once they built the bypass in Hampton Bays, when you can go by Hampton Bays, then somehow it became Route 27. But Montauk Highway is still in existence, right? If you go through Hampton Bays, go past the diner, and then keep going.
Yes, that's Montauk. Yes, it is. And, you know, all the people, all the famous, all the doctors and officials and what was where what. So this was actually a farming country, wasn't it?
Well, yes and no. Yes, it was. But I think we have to remember potatoes, for example, were not raised out here on a big scale until the late 1800s. The kind of farming that went on in Amagansett, East Hampton, Springs, Wainscott, Montauk was animal husbandry. They were raised animals here. Cattle, sheep, horses, pigs. That's what one of the main things that the people did here. Rather than growing crops, the things they grew, they ate. They didn't sell them someplace else. But the animals, they did.
And of course, it's mostly, they took advantage of the water.
Well, look at this
and
place.
Fishing and all that.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
and whaling. The
Yeah.
natives, the natives would help them at times, or on crews that go whaling. But yes, this was a kind of an ideal spot when you think of it.
Yes, yes, it was.
And it was away from everything too.
So where are you from?
You ever hear of Amagansett?
No.
Yes, I grew up in Amagansett.
And you were born there?
No, believe it or not, people don't know this. My father was born out here. So my father was a Bonnacker. And my mother was from that place where all the famous people have come from, Brooklyn. Okay?
Yes, I remember.
But she took a train out here one day with her girlfriend and met my father eventually, and then they got married, but they went back to Brooklyn because my father was working on the railroad. He was an engineer, a fireman on the railroad, which meant he shoveled coal into the burner. It wasn't you push a button.
Amazing.
But he kept getting laid off. So I was born in Victory Memorial Hospital in Brooklyn, New York. But in 1947, my father moved back out here and started his plumbing business. And he was a plumber for 30 or 40 years. And the house that I'm living in is the house that I grew up in.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yes,
That's
so
very
Loretta
rare.
and I are living in the house I grew up in Amagansett.
So you went to school in Amagansett?
I did. I went to Amagansett grade school. I went to East Hampton High School. Yes, I did.
And what did you major in?
Well, then the only 4 years I've ever been away from here is when I went to Oneonta State Teachers College. I became a teacher. And then I taught school in Springs for 31 years.
Wow. What did you teach?
History? 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. And then I taught in the Gifted and Talented program. I never taught history.
You never did.
Ashamedly, I didn't know a lot of history until the late 1980s when I started studying it. So what I know is this much. There's so much more to know. But I've only been
You started studying history?
About 1987,
I mean,
1988.
you just, because you liked it, so you decided to study it?
I was working for the East Hampton Historical Society, all right? And I was sitting in front of Clinton Academy. Clinton Academy's right next to the Star office. And I was waiting for people to come so I could take them on tours. Well, it was July and August. It was very hot. Everybody went to the beach. Nobody came.
Nobody came.
So I went to the library and took out the trustee records and started reading them. Then after I read them, I went and I took out the town records and I started reading them. And that's how I started getting interested in local history. And then the East Hampton Independent, when it first started in 1993, asked me to write a history column for them. So that's how I learned a lot of history, by writing columns about Lyman Beecher, Joshua Penney, Julia Gardner, the Montauk Indians, the railroad, and I learned a lot by researching those articles.
Is there any one particular thing you like better than the rest?
No, there's so much more to learn. I think that's what I like. I do like that we have one of the most wonderful repositories of local history in the East Hampton Library called the Long Island Room, where you can go in there and look up many, many things about East Hampton history. It's in the library. And the other thing that's been good, this Friday at Clinton Academy is the first of the 4 lectures about local history, the East Hampton Historical
Really?
Society. Richard Barons is going to be talking about street names, like the question you asked me. So he's going to be telling you the derivation of some of the street names in our town.
And what time is that going
That's
to?
7 o'clock at Clinton Academy this Friday.
This
And it's
Friday?
free.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
and there'll
another
be
thing.
3 more, one in February, one in March, and one in April.
Well, I guess you're friends with, or you know, Dennis Fabisak.
I do know Dennis, yes.
Yeah.
He's, the library, of course, is such a wonderful place.
It
It
is.
really, really is.
Yeah.
We have a beautiful library. We have a
Yes,
beautiful
well,
library.
it's a nice, he'll be very happy that you said that.
Yes,
You
that's
gave a
I'd
plug.
be glad to, yeah.
You have some pamphlet in front of you?
Well, you said that the play's the thing.
Yes.
Well, I was in probably 40 or 50 plays in my lifetime,
Is that right?
mostly at Guildhall.
Yeah.
So what I
What-
did is I went to the theater the other night and the Hampton Theater Company in Quogue, and they put on Death Trap.
I was there. Maybe I saw you.
Yes, I was there. So they gave a list of all the plays that they have done,
Yes.
and I checked the ones that I was in.
In Quogue you were?
No, this is starting in 1963 at Guildhall.
So what were you in?
I was in The Mousetrap.
Yeah.
I was in What the Butler Saw. I was in The Rainmaker. I was in You Can't Take It With You, Moon Over Buffalo, Wait Until Dark, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest,
Wow.
You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, Arsenic and Old Lace, Oklahoma, Fiorello, Guys and Dolls, and then I stopped counting.
And what type of roles did you
I
have?
usually played funny comedy roles until Wait Until Dark, when I played Alan Arkin, the killer.
Oh.
But mostly it was a comedy role.
I love comedy. And do you also sing?
No, I was in musicals, but either they had somebody else sing the song or I talked it. In Oklahoma, I did a talking song. And in Fiorello, I talked my part. But they had other people really sing the hard notes. And I just kind of bluffed my way through it. So no, I
That's
don't
something.
never did.
Well, if you remember, Fred Astaire really couldn't sing,
Right.
but
But
he
he could
sang
dance.
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, he was a talker. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was really a professional, too. You get away with it when you're a professional.
Well, I'm impressed that you were in the theater also. Did you
Yes.
ever work behind the?
Yes, I did the job of the stage manager sometimes in Bridgehampton with the Spindrift Players. And that's where
Spindletop?
the Spindrift Players, they were
Oh.
called. They started in the middle 70s
Oh.
and maybe lasted 10 years. I was in the Guildhall Players. I was in the Maidstone Regional Theater Company. I was in the Community Theater Company, the Southampton Players.
Those companies come and go. There's a
come and
very
go.
few that stay.
1999 was the last play I was in, so over 10 years ago, because it's much more difficult to remember your lines.
Oh, I don't know how they do it. I can't
don't
remember
know either.
lines.
It would take too much time now to remember them. So I do
Yes.
play readings. They have play readings at Guildhall, the Naked Stage.
Yes.
They put on play readings, so I do those once in a while because you can have the script in your hand.
Yeah, I had 3 of my plays read there.
You did?
Yes.
Wow. Well, I don't go all the time. Oh, wow.
Well, that was when the Naked Stage first started.
Oh, they were
That's-
down in the Mrs. Lamb room, yeah, when they were
No.
renovating the theater?
No,
No?
before that.
Oh, even before
Way
that?
before that.
Oh,
I
wow.
was one of the first, mine was one of the first plays they read.
What was the name of what was the play?
Oh, Gregory.
Old Gregory?
Oh,
Gregory.
Oh, Gregory.
Oh.
It was a comedy. It was about a bird.
A bird.
Gregory was a bird.
Oh. And did the bird have lines in your
Yeah, actually, one of the players said a
play?
few
A bird. What
lines.
kind of a bird was Gregory?
Well, a parakeet or
Oh,
a parrot, a
Of course.
talking bird.
Oh, a talking bird, right. Duh.
Yeah, he said some very naughty lines.
Oh.
Yes.
Do you remember who played Gregory?
Well, I remember, I think the girl's name was Barbara somebody. I
Oh.
haven't heard from her.
Oh, it was a female who played Gregory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she even put on. As a matter of fact, there was a reading right here also, the first time.
Oh.
And the second time they did it in at Guildhall.
Guildhall.
But the first time it was right here, and I have it filmed. And she was sitting over there, and she wore like a outfit that had wings,
Oh,
bird,
wow.
and she was very good at
Oh,
that.
good. Oh, okay.
And then Retina was in it too.
He was?
Yeah, because it took place in the Hamptons, in one of those roads and dunes, and then of course the Hamptons can't be right without Dan's paper.
Oh, of course
so,
not.
I mean,
I
it
know.
belongs. It belongs. So I included him in the play.
Did he have a part?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yes. So that's how I still think that it's worth doing again.
Are you writing any plays now?
What I'm doing is a friend of mine, Barbara Goldowski. She had written a book with short plays, and she was also my guest. And I took two of her. She gave me a book, so I read it, and two of her plays I made into a one-act play.
Oh, okay.
So that's where I'm at right now
Well,
as
good
far
for
as
you.
writing.
Yeah. All right. So the play is the thing.
Yes,
Yes,
it
it
is the
is.
thing, yes. So, you have any siblings?
I do.
Or-
I have two sisters who live in Rochester. They both live in Rochester. And I had a brother, but he passed away in 1992, maybe.
And
And my sisters were very generous in allowing me to buy the house from them instead of having to sell it and get all the money. So
Yes.
they made it possible for me to be living in the house with Loretta. So that's I always mention that about them. We were taught correctly in our house how to get along.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, are they also historians, or they like
No,
history at all?
my youngest sister is now going to be the director of a retreat house for women who are leaving terrible situations. They need a place
Yeah.
for a while, and then they go on. So she retired. She worked for the state for many years in social services. She retired. And my other sister was a teacher's aide in the school right around the corner, and she's retired. So even though they're younger than me, they're both retired and taking care of the grandchildren. I have no grandchildren because I had no children, and the cats we have don't want to go to college, so we're fine. We're just happy
Yeah, that's
without it.
good.
It's okay.
So, what about some the famous people who lived here? A lot of the streets are named after people who lived here.
They are. There is, in fact, there are 3 streets. One of them is called James Lane. That's where Home Sweet Home is, and that's where I work. You know, I work in the museum right next to St. Luke's Church called Home Sweet Home Museum. It's a little salt box house. That's on James Lane. The street by the library is called Buell Lane.
Yeah.
And then the street up by the Palm Restaurant is called Hunting Lane.
Right.
And they're all named after the first 3 ministers that we had in our town. Each one of them was a minister, and each one of them served for about 50 years. So the first 150 years of East Hampton's history, we only had 3 ministers. And that's why those houses, those streets are named.
Well, you said that was Hunting Lane, but there was a doctor called Huntington.
That's different. Oh, that's a very important name, though.
Yes.
The first minister was Thomas James, and he lived on James Lane.
Right.
The second minister was Nathaniel Hunting. He lived where the Palm Restaurant is right now. The third minister was Samuel Buell. He lived right on the corner where the library is. All right?
Right.
But Dr. Huntington, that's another whole story. Not only is he important, his whole family was important. And one of the most important people in his family was Cornelia Huntington. East Hampton's first woman published author. She not only wrote poems, she wrote a novel in 1858 called Sea Spray, which was a thinly veiled story of East Hampton. And you know what it tells us? It tells us that in the 1840s, this town was crowded in the summertime. Not after the railroad came in the 1890s, not after the artists came in the 1880s. Even before that, people were jamming into this place in July and August. And so Cornelia Huntington is a very important character. Why did you think of the name Huntington? What made you think that?
Because of the disease.
Yes, well, that's another great point. That Dr. Abel Huntington's grandson, Dr. George Huntington,
Yes.
gave a paper in Ohio in 1872. And he said this disease called Crier, once it skips a generation, you're safe.
Right.
Nobody ever knew that before. Nobody ever figured that out. And who figured it out? Dr. George Huntington. And that's
yes.
where we get Huntington's Crier. That's correct. And his house where he lived is still on Main Street. It's been changed, of course, a little bit.
Yeah, and there's a book written.
Yes, Alice Wexler wrote a book about cases of Huntington's Crier here in East Hampton.
The lady who walked into the sea.
That's right.
Yes.
The Phoebe Tillinghast walked into the sea, and Alice Wexler came here and did a lot of research and found a lot of families who were affected by this, but they kept it quiet. Years ago, it was a shame.
It's a very terrible
Yes,
disease.
it wasn't like St. Vitus dance. If you had that as a youngster, you could get over it. But once you got Crier, you would just slowly, went away. Yes. Yep. Dr. Abel Huntington, the whole Huntington family, very important here in East Hampton.
And how about the Hodges family?
The Hedges?
Or Hedges?
Hedges. There's Hedges, Edwards. You get names like Hedges, Edwards, Osborne, Dayton, Talmadge, Gardner.
Yeah,
like
Gardner.
They're
Gardner.
all, yes, Lion-Garden. They are the older names. They were some of the first people who came here. Luke Lilly was even among them. And then there's going to be a book written about Lion Gardner and his daughter, who died in 1657, screaming that she was killed by a witch. And my wife, Loretta, is writing a book about not only this case and what happened here in East Hampton, but why was the woman who was accused, Elizabeth Garlick, she actually was let free, which is highly unusual. It brings in alchemy. It brings in John Winthrop Jr. It brings in the character of Lion Gardner, and she's found so much information about Lion Gardner's life before he came to America. Hitherto, we didn't know, people said we didn't know anything until 1635 when he showed up in Boston. But she has researched and found about his life in Holland and in the Netherlands, because, he married a Dutch woman, Lion Gardner, and brought her here to East Hampton.
No, I didn't know that.
Well, I'm not going to tell you anymore. You'll have to buy the book.
You will.
Or the play that may be written. No, I'm kidding.
So is this going to be a factual book or a mystery?
No, it's going to be a factual book. It's going to be a factual book.
It's amazing.
My wife's an anthropologist, so she has to deal with facts.
I see.
She's an anthropologist.
Well, it is just fascinating. The whole history out here.
And we have so much of it. The town records have all been transcribed. You can go to the library and pick out the town records starting in 1648 and read them. I mean, how many other places? Or you can go to the trustee records from 1725 on and read them. And then the Long Island Room has the real trustee records, the real ones, in a very safe place. And the town, at the town clerk's office, they have the real records written out. I don't know how anybody could read them years ago.
Where are you going to appear next time?
The next appearance is going to be April 27th at Clinton Academy, when Kenny Cullum and myself are going to do a show about vaudeville performers who performed at the Edwards Theater.
Oh my gosh, that's wonderful.
And we're going to talk about performers who performed at Clinton Academy when it was our Guild Hall years ago.
It was a college, wasn't it?
It was an
The
academy,
first college,
but
yeah.
it was also, after it closed as a school in 1870, there were performances there. Yes, and I found a great opera, a great singer, not just an opera singer, but a very famous African-American singer called Ciceretia Jones, who performed at Clinton Academy in 1890. So we're going to talk about her. That'll be one of the people we're going to talk about. And then we're going to try to have people perform just like they did in 1890.
Most interesting.
So that's
we have
the next.
to look for that. And just for closing, there is a little plaque, what you call it, in front of Guild Hall, and telling that this used to be what it used, who lived here, and all that, history. And I think they should have more of those all over. Commemorate what places used to be, so people
They do
would
have
know.
some, yeah. You have to be careful now because many times the information put on the plaques wasn't right.
Wasn't
as we
right.
find out new information, something put up in 1976.
Yeah.
Look how many years later it is. I'll stop because you got to go.
Well, it was so wonderful having you here. I've been looking forward to talking to you. Because, as I said, I love history, and as far as I know, you know it all.
No, I don't. I just know this much. But
much.
thank you very much for the compliment. Thank you for having me on. All right.
And this Friday?
This Friday, 7 o'clock, Clinton Academy, Richard Barron's, street names like the Sag Harbor Turnpike.
Right. So it's going to be in East Hampton.
Right.
In case people don't know where it is.
It's a and it's going to be it's going to be filmed by LTV. So if you miss it, you can check LTV and it'll be on there eventually.
And in case you want to know more about this program, you could find out in YouTube.
You could. Who's singing?
This is a friend. I wrote this song with a friend, and this other friend recorded it. And then I use it as my theme song. So I want to thank everybody here. I don't know if you still could hear me.
We can't tell, can we? Well, here it is.
Yes.
21. I don't know what that number means.
Oh, that means that it's now, it's finished.
Oh, we're over. Okay.
Yeah, it's so.
Take the microphone.
Yes.